With the experience and resources for cases throughout Louisiana, Walters Papillon Thomas Collins, LLC, is proud to support LPB, specializing in personal injury and wrongful death, with information at lawbr.net.
We call it the Unnamed Storm. The widespread record of precipitation and subsequent flooding that occurred last year throughout the Mississippi River Basin. We were at or above flood stage 206 days in 2019. The June 6th floods in Baton Rouge, if you all remember those last year, and the 8 inches in an hour that New Orleans received the week before Hurricane Barry, not to mention the other several downpours that have flooded New Orleans in the past year. These events overwhelm our drainage system, even if our drainage system is working at 100% capacity. CPEX is working with cities and towns across Louisiana to transform their approach to stormwater management by focusing on green infrastructure, using natural systems to slow and absorb water. Measures such as these are proven to be effective, but it requires the political will to change the status quo in order to implement them. And I'm glad to be up here with Corey, with BREC, because BREC, thankfully, they managed in 2016 9.95 billion gallons of water that if their park systems would not have held that amount of water, that would have been in our homes. Another major result of temperature increases in average global temperatures is sea level rise. Not only is more water entering the oceans as the ice caps melt, but the warmer temperatures cause the water to expand. This is the current coastline in Louisiana. We're already seeing all sorts of problems for our coastal regions, something we know firsthand. The place where I used to fish with my dad are now underwater. Our fishing industry is struggling as changes in water temperature and salinity affect fish and seafood populations, and our coastal communities are seeing declines in population as tax revenue is increasing and residents are seeking less vulnerable places to live. CPEX has been assisting communities in recent years with finding strategies to adapt to these new circumstances, and most recently we've been part of helping several community buyouts where we're relocating residents to safer places. And I can tell you this is an incredibly emotional challenge, and it's really hard in coastal Louisiana because communities are experiencing a death of their identity, a death of everything that they've known. There is a range of estimates of future sea level rise, which is connected to where the temperatures will be. And so the important thing to note, though, is that even the most conservative estimates indicate an increase in sea level rise. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers predicts a foot of relative sea level rise over the next 15 years for Southeast Louisiana. This is what that looks like. 15 years, a 50-year storm could cause damages costing several billion. Now, the world is not going to end. Humans have been adapting since the dawn of mankind, and we will figure this out as well. But knowing and understanding what our future risks are and beginning to make the proactive decisions now is what is needed by all of us. Louisiana residents are reacting. What we're seeing is communities moving one town up or out of the state entirely. We're seeing a slow migration north, and this is coupled with a number of challenges. Not only are existing infrastructure being left behind, schools being boarded up, critical infrastructure not meeting the demands of the new population in the north. It causes a variety of ripple effects that we've got to be prepared for and we've got to be working towards. And like I said, people are also moving out of Louisiana. So this blue, trying to get the laser. The dark blue is what represents Louisiana. You can see we're losing population. We're not attracting new. And in the diagram, the arc at the bottom, the band extends from where it represents the population to leaving to other states, and you can see what that looks like here. If you look at the Baton Rouge Area Foundation city stats in 2019, what was incredibly sad to read in the poll that they conducted is that people, like less than 10% of people want their children to live in Baton Rouge when they grow up. Extreme events and disasters are occurring worldwide, and they're increasing, as you can see in this trend of the green, blue, and yellow are all global disasters related to rain, water, or climate events. These disasters are accompanied by growing costs that impact everything from individual households to local economies to world markets. You can see the upward trend on cost. And you can see that businesses, home, and assets are less insured and becoming increasingly less insurable as these disasters increase as well. These disruptions drive large-scale migration as people seek economic stability and basic resources such as food, water, and safety, which has serious political consequences. The Department of Defense first identified climate change as a national security threat in 1991 under the first Bush administration. And in 2014, the U.S. Department of Defense released a report declaring that climate change will affect the Department of Defense's ability to defend the nation and poses immediate risk to U.S. national security. And banks and investors are increasingly paying attention to how climate change impacts their investments. 2 weeks ago at the World Economic Forum, which is a global convening of financial leaders, climate-related concerns topped the list regarding risk influencing markets over the next 10 years. BlackRock, which is the world's largest asset manager, recently issued this statement: "In the near future, and sooner than most anticipate, there will be a significant reallocation of capital." And he posed the following questions. Will cities be able to afford infrastructure needs as climate risk reshapes the market for municipal bonds? What will happen to the 30-year mortgage, a key building block of finance, if lenders can't estimate the impact of climate risk over such a long timeline, and if there is no viable market for flood or fire insurance in impacted areas? What happens to inflation and, in turn, interest rates if the cost of food climbs from drought and flooding? Industries and leaders of the financial markets are planning for the realities of a changing environment. Louisiana residents and leaders need to be doing the same. To be the state that our kids will thrive in, we need to mitigate and adapt. There are plenty of economic opportunities in mitigation, which also reduces the amount of CO2 we put in the atmosphere. We also must adapt. We need to change the ways we live, we build, and drive our economy to be better suited to the conditions of our environment. Both are necessary. Renewable energy sources are leading the global markets and job creation, and a key piece of diversifying your economic portfolio. We have large swaths of land in North and Central Louisiana where farmers are going out of business, and towns and parishes are unable to meet the needs of their communities. We could go big on solar. Just as one example, there's also a lot of discussion around carbon sequestration and what the states seems to be getting really excited about. Center for Planning Excellence, we don't focus on mitigation. I just wanted to highlight it. And our area of expertise and focus is on adaptation, and what I want to spend the rest of the time today talking with you about. Planning and designing communities that withstand the challenges we face today and are ready to thrive within the environmental conditions that will shape our future is our area of focus. The case for adapting infrastructure to climate change is very compelling. Our infrastructure is a network of high-value assets with expectations for long operational lifetimes. Our existing stock of bridges, roads, drainage, power stations is already vulnerable to today's extreme weather. Climate change will increase these vulnerabilities. Many cities across the globe have been addressing these challenges by adopting adaptive standards for building elevated roads and housing, like they're doing in Miami, allowing room for the river for more stormwater management, like they've done in Buffalo Bayou in Houston or in the Rhine in Amsterdam. Those places are now exporting their expertise globally. We can do the same if we invest in effective adaptation measures and support the talent, innovation, and change that is needed to develop it. Building for the future looks quite different if we are to adapt to the changes that are happening. The way our drainage, streets, buildings, and communities are designed and built has everything to do with how quickly water accumulates and moves, how much heat is trapped in our cities, how healthy or not our population is, and how safely and efficiently people can get to where they need to go. Building infrastructure as we have in the past will not be financially feasible. Climate change impacts will shorten the lifespan of major investments and reduce their utility, as we see happening with our traditional drainage system that's not equipped to handle the more intense precipitation that we are now experiencing. But how do we get from the status quo to become a well-adapted city of the future? Through planning, of course. One really great example that I love to show is Hoboken, New Jersey. This is a really concrete example of moving from the status quo to developing an adaptive strategy and implementing something that's good for all. After Superstorm Sandy, Hoboken received $230 million to address resiliency and flooding. This was just enough money to build a seawall around the city to protect it from storms. But that's not what they did. Instead, they chose to use a strategic system of green space to delay, store, and slowly discharge stormwater. The idea is to integrate flood protection into the urban landscape, making their city even more beautiful. The green infrastructure will not only protect its residents from future flooding, but will also provide a series of public green spaces and improve the livability of Hoboken. But this would not have been possible without the leadership of their mayor, Mayor Zimmer. In her words, flood protection does not have to come from an ugly wall. It could be a planter, a landscape park, a vertical garden, a beautiful mural, a boathouse, outdoor seating, a playground, and a dog park, and more. And closer to home, we're already seeing this take hold in New Orleans. First, they developed the Urban Water Plan, which uses green infrastructure to address over 60 inches of annual rainfall, sea level rise, and antiquated stormwater infrastructure. They're rethinking the city's relationship to water and how it's managed with the realities of increased precipitation and flooding. They have received funding to implement projects that are improving resident safety, reducing risk, and preserving the value of area properties. New Orleans is claiming this space. New Orleans is a leader in this space, and I know that they're experiencing more so than we are here. But we're not far off from a coastal community, and we're seeing a lot more rain. We are protected by levees. This is a space that Baton Rouge could own. We could innovate in this space and bring an entire new light to economic opportunity and viability in the city of Baton Rouge. We can also do this through planning and at the neighborhood and corridor level, and to focus on green infrastructure such as complete streets and walkable areas. So complete streets is something that we've focused on at the level at Baton Rouge, across a lot of cities and communities, but also at the state level. And so it means that sidewalks, bike lanes, transit facilities, street trees, plantings, all of those things to be considered to improve safety and encourage the use of active transportation modes. It benefits public health. It also serves as important adaptive purposes. Street trees and plants help mitigate heat island effects and improve air quality. Both are becoming worse as temperature rises. Street trees and plants can also serve as green infrastructure, helping to detain and drain the stormwater and reducing the demand on overtaxed drainage pipes. We've also been heavily focused on adaptation in our coastal parishes and defining what adaptation means to them and what it could look like. Last year, or I would say over the course of 3 years, we worked with the state to develop 6 coastal parish adaptation plans and 1 regional plan, all this called under the LA Safe umbrella. And what we were looking for is working with communities in the most high-risk areas, the medium-risk areas, and the areas that are lower risk, that are receiving populations, to really figure out how it is that Louisiana is going to proactively adapt to these conditions in a way where we can continue and maintain economic vitality, culture, recreation, all the things that mean a lot to us. And at the state level, this issue is even more prevalent because if our state agencies aren't producing and assisting our local communities with these adaptation measures, then no one is prepared. We've been working closely with the Governor's Office of Coastal Activities to develop state-level guidance and support for adaptation planning and implementation at the regional and local levels. What we're doing is establishing a shared understanding of the full range of impacts related to land loss and climate change, and each agency's role in helping to manage them. Within this policy work, what we are doing, we are uncovering lots of opportunities so that the state is not reactive and responding while we're on the front lines of these changes and challenges, but we're proactively planning and embracing the opportunities associated with them. We're all in this boat together, no pun intended. We must learn from one another. We must seek out leading thinkers, innovators, and doers from Louisiana, across the country, and around the globe to understand what they're doing and learning and connect them with our leaders here. And practitioners, activists, also academics, getting everyone in the same room. This is going to need multi-dimensional thought and strategic direction on moving forward in a way where we're all contributing and thinking of a multidisciplinary approach. And so bringing you back to the beginning of my talk, closing within this mind in closing, I talked about how much I love this state. This is my home, and I'm raising my 2 children here. My work focuses on improving our state so that all of us and our young people will be able to thrive here in the future as well. And I invite you to think of your loved ones. You're all movers and shakers in Baton Rouge and in Louisiana. And if you care about this, if you want to see our city and state successfully navigate these changes and be part of creating opportunities in Louisiana for our children and our grandchildren, please join in supporting adaptation and exploring opportunities and mitigation for our state. And if this talk was interesting to you, I hope that you contact me or anyone from my team to learn more. But I also want to let you know that we just solidified the leading climate author for the International Panel on Climate Change. He's also the lead author on the Oceans and Ice Report, which was the global report on sea level rise that was just released. And we will have him here in Baton Rouge on May 29th. We'll do a public forum, a reception, if people want to go. And I also want to just make you aware of our annual Smart Growth Summit, which is on climate change, but also all of these adaptation planning related items, and that's October 27th and 28th. So if you want to learn more, we have upcoming opportunities for that. So with that, thank you all very much for having me. I hope that you got something from this, and now I can take questions. Great, thanks. Stephanie?
Hey, as a practical matter, how do we stop developments like out on Burbank in the middle of a flood how do we bring these adaptive strategies that everybody says they want? And the mayor spoke about green infrastructure here a year or two ago. When we have a planning commission and a planning department that always seems to find a way around projects that everybody knows are a bad idea.
Yeah. First, leadership. And second is, I question, there's this lack of use of data to make informed decisions that's happening. And so it's mind-boggling to me. I'm not sure why, but we have information regarding our floodplains, what's expected, the changes taking place. And so I really think it's around getting together and making it a priority to reduce flood risk and to wait until we understand the full range of impacts, especially from the models that are about to be developed through the Louisiana Watershed Initiative, to continue to allow the sprawling development that, in reality, I mean, we might be putting people in harm's way. And so I don't know, I'm not certain of a particular development or particular site that we're speaking of, but just in general, we need to use the data that we have to make informed decisions and then have leadership to stand up and make the right decisions. Yep.
I'd like to add to that is our zoning code is totally inadequate. And when changes are we've tried to make changes in the past, they never get approved. So, you know, you can say the planning commission is at fault, but actually it's the influences that don't allow things, and Davis is shaking his head. We've been on those committees. So as Camille said, movers and shakers, put some pressure on your planning commissioners.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, Cordell?
Yeah, I have I guess it's a kind of similar comment to offer, though. You know, there's been a work group that had been looking at the plan of government for Baton Rouge. And we met with that work group, and as they were looking at the section in the plan of government that deals with planning, and our recommendation, we gave them data from other cities all over the country, which demonstrates that the resources that we're putting toward planning in Baton Rouge are by far the lowest of any peer city in the country. And so the recommendation that CPEX made was not, we know how to fix this, but that the community needs to have a work group put together that will look at how planning is done in other places and look at how we're doing it here, and then develop a better system for planning, because we'll never do what Stephanie's talking about until we have the right, you know, mechanism for doing planning and getting those things implemented.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brief question about planning here in Baton Rouge. You briefly touched on complete streets. Can you talk about what's the latest with government specifically, and what other areas of town y'all are looking at implementing these sorts of more holistic planning tools in our city specifically?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in 2013, we partnered with the city and a number of other organizations to host a Better Block demonstration project on Government Street, where we worked with Downtown Development District, Build Baton Rouge, BREC was a big partner, many others, to work with the community to develop a vision for what Government Street would look like. That then led to the road transfer of the road diet that's currently underway. And I know it's given a lot of people headaches because it's been under construction for a while. I'm told that it'll be done towards the end of this year. I'll just note that not all parts of that plan and that vision are being currently incorporated into the design. And so we're anticipating a phase 2, which will include street trees and other items, wayfinding signage, and Davis is already working on some of those things. The Center for Planning Excellence has found that planning across the nation, municipalities can't pay for everything. And so there's this movement occurring of public-private partnerships and crowdsourcing in local areas to specifically focus on making improvements to quality of life and quality of place in neighborhoods. And so this year we're launching an impact fund where we're going to be working in communities focusing on rebuilding tangible things to improve the built environment. And so we're starting off in Mid-City and this year. So we hope to be able to do that everywhere. General Honoré?
I certainly enjoyed your presentation,
Yeah.
and I agree with you. Amen. But in order to create change, we have to focus from a political perspective in state law. We'd be willing to partner with you on sponsoring a bill, because until we get some change in the legislature in our laws, we got about 100 laws on there that prohibit anything we talk about as far as progress planning. Have you started to look at a legislator to probably sponsor a bill to create some state legislation to deal with this, as opposed to, well, we'll let CPRE handle it? That's not the answer. I mean, every town has equity in this. Every parish has equity in this. Are you looking at a bill that might address this in the legislature?
And as a 501c3, we do not lobby and work as much in the legislature. However, we have a 2-year initiative where we're working with the Governor's Office of Coastal Activities, and the CPRA, and all the state agencies to look internally at their policies and programs on how better to make adjustments so that we can be prepared for these changes, but more proactively start looking into the opportunities inherent with them. And so that work is underway, and our team would love to talk to you more about that. I think you'd really like what we're doing. But essentially, you know, it's we've created it to where there's a belief that Coastal Restoration Protection Authority, they own this coastal crisis, but they don't. We all do. Everyone does. And so we're really clearly defining how each sector is impacted. So for example, the Department of Health and, you know, how are they incorporating data in their decisions around hospitals and the movement and the population north? Are they prepared for the mental illness that's coming with the relocation and migration that we're experiencing? And so we're really thinking about all of those facets. But no, we are not championing a bill. Yep.
Thank you. With the experience and resources for cases throughout Louisiana, Walters Papillon Thomas Collins, LLC, is proud to support LPB, specializing in personal injury and wrongful death, with information at lawbr.net.